In this video, we are going to be building this little wheelbarrow planter project. We are going to be building it entirely out of fence pickets. We do have printed plans available at $5plans.com for this project and many others. And we have a lot of free plans for various different projects on there as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin by cutting all my parts. And I'm going to try and give you all the angles and everything in the video, so you wouldn't absolutely have to use the plan itself. I do have two templates that I've cut out from the plans to create this little curvature piece and also for the wheel for the front. So I've got those cut out. I'm ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and get all my parts cut, and then I'll come back to you and we'll discuss all the parts you're going to need for this project. Okay, let's talk pieces and parts for our wheelbarrow. We're going to be using just a little bit more than 2 fence pickets. Let's just call it 2.5 fence pickets, okay? So pretty economical project to make, and one that you can do probably in a half an hour or so once you've actually built one. So what we're going to need is we're going to need 4 pieces that are 8 inches long. We're going to need 1 piece that is 11 inches long. We're going to need 2 pieces that are 19 inches long. We're going to need 2 pieces that are 23 inches long. And then these little guys are 1 3/4 wide. And they're 8 5/8. And then these, we have 4 sticks here. And these are 33 inches long, but again, 1 3/4 wide. Okay? So now what we need to do is we're going to have to cut these 23s. We're going to have to cut a front miter of 15 degrees. And then we're going to use our template to create this curvature on the back side. And we're just going to use our jigsaw to do that. Okay. And then on our 8-inch pieces, we're going to have to do 4 semicircles. So we're going to have to do those. And then on our little 8 5/8 inch pieces, this sits at a 10-degree tilt, our wheelbarrow. So we'll have a 10-degree miter on one end that we're going to have to do there. And then there's 2 other things that we have to do. So on our 19-inch pieces, we have to do a 15-degree bevel on the short edge. And then on this piece, which is 11 inches, we also need a 15-degree bevel on the long edge. So here we need it on the short, and then here we need it on the long. And we're going to do that on our table saw. Okay? And then we are going to have to add a little bit of an angle here on our arm pieces, but we'll talk about that when we get to that. I think that'll be the easiest way to do that. So first things first, I am going to go ahead and start here on these pieces, and we'll go ahead and get those all cut out with the jigsaw, and then we'll kind of move on from there. Now this is just how I do it because I think it's pretty simple. So what I've done is I've taken 2 1-inch staples on either end and just stapled those together temporarily. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and cut this out with our jigsaw. And then I'll go ahead and shape this with my palm sander and get it nice and round exactly the way I want it. And then I'll use that as a template for the next set. I'll go ahead and pop a couple of 1-inch staples in there to hold those 2 together and do the exact same process. Again, that's just how I would do it, but if you have another way to do it that you think is better, then by all means. But that's how I'm going to go about doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out and cut those out, and then I'll show you how to put those 2 together. So you can see that's what it looks like when we get the one done, and then I've transferred that over, used this as a template for the next set. Go ahead and zip that out, give it a little sandy sand. Then we'll take these 2 apart, and I'll show you exactly how we put them all back together again. All right, so now we have our 4 wheel pieces already done. I will tell you, if you're going to be building a lot of these, this is where a router template would really come in handy, because then once you have one piece, then all the pieces would be absolutely identical. These are going to be just off just a little bit because of of how we made them. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use a little bit of wood glue. So I'm just going to go ahead and we'll just throw on some wood glue here. And then we have these other pieces. So you see the seam is horizontal. So we could put this any angle we want to, as long as we're going to cross that, okay? And then we'll go ahead and affix this with some 1-inch staples. And then we'll do the exact same thing here. We'll put in some 1-inch staples, and that will hold those two boards together. I'll probably go ahead and use staples on both sides. So we have some staples going down, some staples coming up. And then what I'll do is we'll take this over to our combination sander, and then we'll kind of square this up so it's all a little bit more uniform and perfect. Okay? So that's kind of, because you can see here, see how we're off just a little bit, and then over here we're off just a little bit. So we'll just use our sander to kind of square all that up once we get these two pieces together. And that will be our wheel. So I'll go ahead and get that done, and then we'll move on to the next step. So there is our finished wheel, and you can see it's pretty, you know, for what we're doing, it's plenty good. Again, if we had router template, then it would be a bit more perfect, but that will get the job done. So our wheel is complete. So now I think our next thing we're going to do is go ahead and work on getting these two sides done. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my 23-inch pieces and add this 15-degree miter. Then we're going to use the template from the plans to make those two curves. And I'm going to do the same thing I did on the wheel. I'm going to pop these together with some 1-inch staples and cut both of those at the same time so they'll be identical. We'll go ahead and get that done, and then we'll move on to the next step. So you can see there, we just used our template and drew it out there on our board. And we've added our 15-degree miter here to the front end. So now I'm just going to go ahead and cut that out using my jigsaw. So there are my two sides complete. That was pretty simple. This doesn't take long, and I'll cut out with the jigsaw and get it shaped with our orbital sander. I just take the two. I just had two staples holding this together. Pop those out, and we're good to go. Move on to our next step. So what is the next step? Well, I think what we'll do is let's just go ahead and add our 10-degree miter to these little guys. That'll knock that out of the way. And then we're going to go ahead and add our 15-degree bevel to our long piece and our 15-degree bevel here on the ends of our 19-inch boards. These are our floorboards. And let's go ahead and get all of that done, and then we'll go ahead and work on our arms. So on our 8 5/8-inch pieces, we've got our 10-degree bevel added there. And then over here, we have our 15-degree bevel added to the long side of our 11-inch piece here. And then you can see we have our 15-degree bevel added to the short side of our 19-inch pieces. Okay, so all of that work is now done. Now we can talk about our arms. So for our handles for our wheelbarrow, what we've done is we've taken 2 sticks of 1 3/4 wide, and just right now I've just glued and nailed them together at this point. I am probably going to come back in and add some screws, at least a few 1-inch screws in certain locations, just to hold these two boards together a little bit better. Now, this is what I'm doing. I don't think you really need 2. You know, if you're just using it for decorative purposes, 1 is certainly sufficient. Just like on our wheel, you know, we use 2 thicknesses on our wheel. That's just what I wanted to do. Again, this is kind of a prototype. I just want to see what it looks like. So anyhow, that's what I decided to go ahead and go with. Now, what we need to do on these, and this is a little bit tricky. I'm not really sure. I guess, I don't know. I'm just going to use my miter saw. But basically what we need to do is we need to come from this point right here at the very tip and come back 4 inches, wherever 4 inches is, and make a diagonal cut. That is going to give us roughly a 5-degree cut. Now, I do something crazy on my miter saw that you definitely should never do because it's dangerous to make that cut. So I'm not going to show you, but that's what I'm going to do off camera. So I'm going to measure back 4 inches, draw a little line from this crack where the two meet back, and make that a bevel cut there. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do right now. And now on the plans, you can see, I think they call for a rounded handle out back. I'm not going to do that on my prototype. So I'm going to skip that step and just see what it looks like. Okay. So let me go ahead and get that done, and then we can start putting this together. So now you can see what that looks like right from that tip. Like I said, 4 inches back, and then just create a mark and then just cut on that line on both sides. And that will give us, ultimately, it'll kind of be splayed out like that. Of course, we'll have a wheel here in the middle, but we'll get to that part, okay? So now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my box together here, and then we can go ahead and finish putting this together. So I have my two 19-inch boards, and it's important to look at this bevel. So the bevel is going kind of in this direction. So the long end is sitting on the table. Now, the original plans did not call for these cleats, but I decided to add these cleats anyhow to hold these two boards together. I don't know if I'm ultimately going to like that or not. This is just an initial prototype, so we're going to try doing it this way and see what it actually looks like. I may regret doing this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it for this prototype. So this is 11, so I just eyeballed these, so they're probably 10 inches, and they're in from each end 3 inches. So we're going to use a little bit of glue, pop it with a couple of staples, and then we're going to put in some 1-inch deck screws just to firm up, holding that in place. So let me go ahead and get that done, and then we'll move on to the next step. So you can see we've got our bottom cleats in place, a couple of 1-inch screws along with staples. Then on the front, I used a little bead of glue and went ahead and put on my 11-inch front piece. Now you can see here that bevel is right in line. So make sure that 15-degree bevel that we added is oriented properly so it winds up being flush right there, okay? And then we're just gonna use a little bit of glue, and then we're gonna go ahead and put on our side just like that, okay? Pretty straightforward. One thing I will point out that I think does look nice is a little bit of a recess here. The way we have it on the plans is having it flush, but I'm actually going to pull this forward because I think we can. 1 fence picket thickness, which is 5/8 of an inch, and we'll still have plenty overhang back here. But I don't know, I kind of like that extra offset there, so I'm just going to go ahead and add it on the fly. And I'll probably change the plans too, but I just think that looks better than having it flush there. I don't know, but that's what I'm going to do. So 1 fence picket thick, and then we'll go ahead and pop in our staples and put on both of our sides. All right, so our little wheelbarrow box is good to go here. So now we're ready to go ahead and put the box, mount it to our handles. So let me go ahead and get our handles arranged and figure out some dimensions, exactly where everything's got to go, and then we'll show you how to attach the box to the handles here. All right, so let me show you what I decided on placement. So what I did here is I've got these two handles, right? We could have put them right at the edge of the table or something to make sure that those are square to one another, you know, flat. But what I did is I measured back 6 inches, and that's going to give me a rough placement of my box, okay? And I just eyeballed where center was up here. Now you can measure from this handle to the outside and from this handle to the outside, and I probably will on the final positioning. And what I did, I just took my beaming clamp. These are the beaming clamps. These are from Harbor Freight, and I've used these for a long time, and I really like them. They're, you know, affordable. They're not the cheapest ones at Harbor Freight. They're kind of a step up, but they claim to have 450 pounds of pressure, and they work really well. Like I said, I've used them quite a bit. So anyhow, pinch those together is what I would do. I just got a couple of pieces of scrap to pretend that's my wheel. So 6 inches from the front. Now, back here, I just eyeballed it. So, you know, the distance from here to the arm and here to the arm, just eyeballing it. Again, you can decide if you want to take a tape measure and make it exact, okay? Now, one other thing I did here, because we're going to put a screw in from the top, okay? And when we do that, that's going to have a tendency to spread these two pieces apart. I'll put it at a bit of an angle, but even so, that will kind of be pushed apart by default. So what I'm going to suggest is that we come under here, and what I did is I marked 2 marks where that cleat was on the bottom, and I'm going to put a screw right on those 2 marks. And over here, same thing, I've got 2 marks here, and I'm going to put a screw in each one of them. I'm going to do that on the inside so they're not noticeable. But I am going to put 1 screw in, again, on the inside, on each one of the handles too, up here, okay? But to do that, I'm going to have to obviously take this apart and kind of reset things. But so that's what I've decided for placement, okay? So we're going to come back 6 inches. We're going to mark our screw locations. We're going to go ahead and put our screws in, and then we'll put our box back on. Again, I'm going to come at a bit of an angle and screw. So we're going to have a couple. And what I did too is I just eyeballed. I set the box up on end and eyeballed where that cleat was, and I made me a little mark there and a little mark right there, because I know that's where I can look from down below where that line's going to be and know where my screw should be, okay, to hold this in place. So I'll probably just use 4 screws. You know, we probably could put 1 more in the middle, but I think just the 4 screws will be plenty for what we're doing. All right, so let me go ahead and get that far, and then I'll come back to you and we'll wrap it up. Success! Let's go ahead and pull out our spacer so we can see we have our 4 screws in place. We used 2.5-inch screws. We went through the cleat and into our handles here. Now I did mess up. I said I was going to put the screws to the inside, and I went and put the screws to the outside. But I don't think it really matters that much and I think I am going to probably finish this one off and possibly even keep it. So I may just go ahead and putty those holes and paint it all up and what have you. I do like the cleats. I don't hate the cleats. So if you're going to build one, the plans will include the cleats. I just think that's a simpler process of mounting our box. So yeah, it'll look just fine. So now what we have to do is we have to put in our little kicker legs here, okay, and we will use a screw on those as well. So we'll use quite a bit of wood glue, make sure they're good and strong, and we're going to come in from this end in 8 inches, and that's where our kicker leg will go. And then we will just probably wind up eyeballing our wheel, exactly where we want our wheel to be. And what we'll do is we'll put in a couple of staples, and then we'll probably drop in at least 1 screw, maybe even 2, to hold our wheel in place. Okay, but I'll probably just kind of eyeball that to what I think looks good. All right, so let me go ahead and do that, and then we'll show you our final product. Well, there you have it. That is the finished project. I just staged it up a little bit for my pictures. So I hope you enjoyed this one. It really is a pretty simple project. It's cheap on materials, and it's not very time consuming once you've done a couple. And make sure that if you're doing it for profit, you offer the opportunity to customize the sides of it as well. So that can bring us extra money too if you have the means to have a vinyl cutter and be able to, or a laser engraver or whatever you might do to customize the sides there for them. Thanks for watching.